Hi, this is Dan Whitney with the Whitney Law Firm in Towson, Maryland. Today, we're going to talk about a case that occurred when a member of the military living in California saw a 2013 M5 advertised here in the great state of Maryland for about $38,000 and decided that that was a car he was interested in. So he's stationed in California. The car is here in Maryland. Of course, I'm here talking about this case, so it didn't end well. At least the sale didn't end well. And so what happened is this. He sees the car, he contacts the dealer, and it's not a franchise dealer, it's a used car lot who will remain nameless for the time being. And he gets in touch with a person who, as it turns out, appears to be acting as an unlicensed salesperson. And he says, hey, I'm really interested in this car. What kind of condition is it in? And the guy says, specifically, he says it's mint and the car has no issues. That's a pretty specific representation. No issues could cover a lot, but no issues means no issues. And further, the vehicle was advertised. Part of the description online, it sounded great. It was represented as having or as being able to execute flawlessly to maximize performance and unleash 552 horsepower on demand, while a lightning-quick 7-speed M double-clutch transmission provides uninterrupted acceleration. So we've got a 2013 M5 that is capable of executing flawlessly with uninterrupted acceleration. I'm in. I'm a buyer too. So he reads the advertisement, speaks with the unlicensed salesperson who says it's in mint and it has no issues, and he ends up buying it. So the car now has to get shipped all the way out to California. And of course, he pays, he cuts him a check after he financed through his credit union for about $38,000, $39,000. They get the check, the car gets shipped to California. He gets it. It arrives, it's in one piece. And he says, okay, time to take it for a drive. He turns it on, and guess what? There is no uninterrupted acceleration. There is no executing flawlessly. Instead, it's nothing but problems. He turns it on, and right away there's lights. And the lights and the check engine light pops on, and the error messages include drive moderately, system unable to detect tire pressure loss, consult service center, drive moderately, maximum drivetrain output not available, consult service center. So maximum drivetrain output not available. That doesn't sound good, especially on a performance vehicle. So what he learns is when he's trying to accelerate, that message pops up and the acceleration stops. So the car will not operate as intended. It's not even driving normally. So he's got problems. So he takes it to a BMW dealer and some independent shops out there in California and discovers that the thing needs about $11,000 worth of work. It has all kinds of problems. And he reaches back out to the unlicensed salesperson back here in Maryland and says, hey, I've got all these problems. And the response is basically nothing. They're not willing to do anything meaningful involving the vehicle. They won't take the car back. They won't pay for the $11,000 in repairs. They're not being helpful, to put it lightly. So he ends up finding us, calls the office. We look into the case. We take the case, and we file a lawsuit. And as part of the lawsuit, there's something called the exchange of discovery information, which simply means each side writes out questions, the other side has to answer. Of course, they're going to object, but still some information manages to slip through the gaps. And then also some discovery requests are sent, basically saying, give me all the documents that refer or relate to the vehicle in any way, any inspections you had done, work that was performed, any documents you exchanged, meaning the dealer, with any other person involving the vehicle at all. So that's a pretty broad category of documents and should cover everything that has to do with this transaction, the sale of the vehicle, and prior to the sale, where did they get it worked on, any repair orders, service tickets, anything. So we start going down the road and we get some documents back, and all we get is what appears to be 3 out of 6 pages of a pre-purchase inspection from a local BMW dealer. And it just looks like a pretty typical, about 110-point pre-purchase inspection. No serious problems are noted, and they say this is what we based our representations on, that the car didn't have any problem. So, okay, interesting. So then we end up taking the deposition. I end up taking the deposition of the owner of the vehicle, and his testimony is interesting. And in relevant part, these are some of the things that he testified to, that the owner was in charge of advertising for the vehicle, and that he is the one who put the ad together. So the flawless execution, uninterrupted acceleration, he knew he was putting that in the ad for the vehicle. That he agreed that advertisements should be accurate as to the representations that are made to consumers. That's an easy one, but you'd be surprised they don't all agree with that. That he did take the vehicle for a pre-purchase inspection to the local BMW dealer. That he's the one who drove it. That he's the one who drives the vehicles, and that it was reasonable for our client to believe the advertisement and to rely on the representations that were made about the vehicle, and it would be reasonable for a customer to believe that the vehicle would execute flawlessly with uninterrupted acceleration. In other words, would you agree that a customer should be able to rely and trust the representations that are made about the vehicle they're considering to purchase? And of course the answer should be yes, but you got to ask, because you never know what kind of nonsense is going to come back. But here he testified to it. And then the only inspection that was ever performed on the vehicle was the pre-purchase multi-point inspection, and that while the vehicle was in the dealer's possession, it never had any problems or error messages. Okay, so I'm pretty sure they're lying. I just don't know exactly about what. And so after the deposition is over, it's time to do some more digging. And so I call down to the local BMW dealer. And I would say, to my surprise, but I'm not that surprised, they say, well, yes, there was a multi-point inspection performed in July of 2020. And I ended up getting my hands on a copy of it. And what's interesting is not only was the inspection done, but there was a note made that the correct mileage cannot be verified. The short test reflash mileage manipulation occurred at approximately 46,000 miles. So the correct mileage cannot be verified. And some sort of manipulation occurred at 46,000 miles. And the vehicle at that time had 39,000 miles. So it looks like we've got some odometer issues out of the gate. And I say, okay, thanks, that's helpful. And then they say, well, and then it was seen about 2 weeks later. Same owner, name of the same person, brought it in. And what do we see 2 weeks later? But the vehicle was brought in for service, but it wasn't driven. It was towed in. And actually, there's a note, they had to remove it from the fire lane ASAP. Okay? Sounds like it might have some issues. There's a note here that there's a lot of white smoke coming from the exhaust. The vehicle has not overheated, but check and advise after it runs for a little bit. Revving the engine causes it to billow. And then we see the crankcase failed. We need to remove valve covers and replace the crankcase system. Total cost over $5,000. We see here, turbocharger seals fail. Start leaking oil into the exhaust. Customer declines repair. Okay. Then we see a turbocharger replace at a cost of about $10,000 between labor and parts. And the total bill, they list about $15,000 in necessary repairs. A total of $189 was paid. So that's interesting. So it sounds like nothing was done. The car was towed there. Nothing was really fixed. And no other documents have been produced saying, here is where we got work done. This is what it cost. Here's the receipts. Here's the company that performed the repairs. So this doesn't sound too good. It's starting to sound like the vehicle should not have been advertised or represented as having no issues or being in mint condition. So what happens next is now it's time to have some additional investigation done. The owner, because the owner appears to have been personally involved in, well, he admitted being personally involved in having the advertising, setting the advertising for the vehicle as to how it was going to be advertised. And he was personally involved in taking it for not just one, like he testified, but it appears to be 2 inspections. And he was told all of these things were wrong, and none of those things were disclosed to the customer. So he appears to have been personally involved. And what that means is he can be held personally liable, not just through his company, but actually through him personally for his personal actions. So, you know, as I said before, the customer was in California, the car was here, no pre-purchase inspection was performed at the request of the individual in California, and actually, what the customer says was done, obviously, or what the dealer says was done, more problems arose thereafter, according to these records. So this case continues to be ongoing. What's interesting is that when you're buying from out of state, it's a very, very slippery slope, and perhaps it's just a straight drop off to ever start, generally speaking, trusting any car dealership about what they say about the condition of the vehicle. One of the sayings is trust but verify, and I would say when it comes to dealers, don't trust but still verify. So I hope this has been helpful. These are some things to keep in mind if you're considering buying a vehicle. If you have any issues with cars in Maryland, give me a call. I hope it's been helpful. Take care. Have a great day.